For more than 100 years, the United States has played the part of the world's policeman. It's jumped into dozens of conflicts, sent troops to every corner of the globe, and spent trillions of dollars doing it. The official reasons are always noble: peace, democracy, national security. But what if the real reason, the one driving decades of foreign policy, wasn't about spreading freedom? What if it was about feeding an addiction? An addiction to oil.
We're Exxon.
This is the story of how black gold has secretly bankrolled America's war machine. It's about how the hunt for energy security has quietly decided who America makes friends with and why those friendships so often end in conflict. And this story doesn't start on a battlefield. It starts on a patch of sun-scorched desert in 1938, Saudi Arabia, where American geologists struck something that would tangle the United States in the Middle East forever and completely alter the course of American history. In the early 20th century, America was an energy giant. It was the world's biggest producer of oil, and that oil helped power the Allies to victory in World War I. Back in the late 1800s, the US was responsible for an incredible 80% of the world's crude oil. But even with all that power, a nagging fear started to creep into Washington. What happens when it runs out? That fear felt real in 1919 when the US Geological Survey issued a dire warning about future shortages, sparking concerns that domestic supplies could be in trouble. This anxiety caused a huge shift in American foreign policy. It was no longer enough to just control the oil at home. Getting access to foreign oil was now a matter of national survival. The government started backing American oil companies in their overseas ventures, treating them like extensions of national power. This idea became concrete during World War II. In 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a plan declaring the defense of Saudi Arabia is vital to the defense of the United States. He drew a straight line from a distant kingdom's oil fields to America's own security. Even as the US was supplying the Allies with its own oil, the plan for after the war was already clear. Europe's recovery and America's booming economy would run on cheap, plentiful oil from the Persian Gulf. That first taste of foreign oil was powerful, and it created a dependency that would shape America for generations. The years after World War II were a golden age for America. Suburbs exploded, highways crisscrossed the country, and factories were humming. The whole economic boom was greased by oil, and more of it was coming from the Middle East. The US went from being a net oil exporter to a net importer in 1948, and that trend only picked up speed. Cheap oil from the Persian Gulf was the lifeblood of the Western world, and the US was going to make sure the tap never ran dry. This growing dependency led to some strange bedfellows. The US cozied up to oil-rich monarchies, especially Saudi Arabia, trading military protection for a guaranteed flow of crude. This unspoken rule that America protects its oil suppliers was finally said out loud in 1980. After the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan put them dangerously close to the Strait of Hormuz, President Jimmy Carter laid down the law in his State of the Union address. He said,
"An attempt by any outside force to gain control of the Persian Gulf region will be regarded as an assault on the vital interests of the United States of America, and such an assault will be repelled by any means necessary, including military force."
This became known as the Carter Doctrine. It was basically a public confession of an addiction. It was America telling the world it would go to war for oil. This cemented a permanent US military presence in the region and paved the way for conflicts to come. The British Empire had left a power vacuum in the Gulf, and the United States decided it had no choice but to fill it. Once you announce you're willing to fight for a resource, it's not a question of if you'll have to do it, but when. The Carter Doctrine wasn't just a threat. It was a promise the US military would have to keep. The first big test came in 1990. when Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded its tiny oil-rich neighbor, Kuwait. It was a direct challenge to the world's oil supply. If Iraq also managed to grab Saudi Arabia's oil fields, one man would have control of a terrifying amount of the world's energy. The American response was fast and overwhelming. Operation Desert Storm was, at its heart, the Carter Doctrine in action, a war fought to keep oil flowing freely out of the Persian Gulf. The 2003 invasion of Iraq, of course, was a lot more complicated. The official reasons given were weapons of mass destruction and ties to terrorism. But many insiders and analysts have since argued that oil was a huge unspoken motivator. A war in Iraq was a chance to take out a hostile leader, secure the country's huge oil reserves, and redraw the map in the world's most critical energy region. This isn't just a fringe theory. While it's debated, oil has been a significant factor in numerous interstate wars since the 1970s, with some studies suggesting a link in up to a quarter of them. And it goes beyond the big invasions. The US keeps a massive, expensive network of military bases all across the Middle East. As of early 2025, there are typically 30,000 to 40,000 US troops in the region. A force designed to protect power, scare off rivals, and most importantly, protect the sea lanes that carry so much of the world's oil. These decades of military action, alliances with dictators, and permanent bases are the steep price of America's oil addiction, a price paid in trillions of dollars and countless lives. Now you might think this is all ancient history. Thanks to the shale revolution, the United States is technically a net exporter of petroleum. America's reliance on foreign oil isn't what it used to be. So why are there still tens of thousands of US troops in the Middle East? Why is the free flow of oil still a top priority? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. We're all swimming in the same global oil market. The price you pay at the pump isn't decided by American oil alone. It's set by the global price. A conflict in the Persian Gulf that shuts down the Strait of Hormuz would make prices skyrocket for everyone, Americans included, and could easily kick off a global recession. To be clear, while the US is a net exporter of petroleum products overall, it still imports a lot of crude oil. So even as a top producer, America still has a very deep interest in keeping oil-rich regions stable. And today, there are new players in the game. Strategic competition with China and Russia is a huge focus for Washington. Both are thirsty for energy, and stopping a rival from controlling the Middle East resources is just as important now as blocking the Soviets was during the Cold War. The Carter Doctrine might be a product of its time, but its core idea lives on in America's ongoing mission to secure the Gulf, now with an eye on new competitors. The names and faces change, but the basic logic doesn't. Control the oil, and you control the world economy. The military bases, the strategic alliances, the diplomatic chess game, it's all still happening. America's energy diet has changed, but its job as the armed guard of the global gas station has not. From that one discovery in the Saudi desert back in 1938 to the messy geopolitics of today, the line connecting American foreign policy to oil has never been broken. For more than 80 years, the need for energy has been like a hidden gravity, pulling the United States into strange alliances, messy interventions, and brutal wars. It's pushed presidents from both parties to prop up authoritarian regimes, to build a military empire far from home, and to spend a staggering amount of blood and treasure. Of course, it was never just about the oil. It's about what the oil provides: economic growth, global influence, and the power to fuel a nation's highest ambitions. In many ways, the US became the world's policeman to protect its favorite gas station. And while things like counterterrorism and democracy are definitely a part of the equation, it's impossible to ignore the central role of oil. The shale boom didn't break this bond, it just made the dependency more complex. The US isn't just a customer anymore, it's a producer and a key stakeholder invested in keeping the whole global system from falling apart. As we look to a future of new energy sources and the looming threat of climate change, The question is, what's the real cost of this addiction? How has this laser focus on one resource defined America's place in the world? And what will that legacy look like for the next generation? If this breakdown gave you something to think about, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the hidden forces that shape our world. We want to know what you think in the comments. Is oil still the main driver of US foreign policy, or has the game changed? Let's discuss it. Thank you for watching The Hidden Media.